Ladies and gentlemen, friends, let me announce the opening of Hub D, Global Turnover, Local Counterfeiting and Piracy of Intellectual Property. And we have a panel of experts, well-known experts, and I am going to introduce our panelists. First of all, Pavel Katkov, Senior Partner at Katkov and Partners, Alexei Popovich, Executive Director at Rosbrand, Anna Grevtsova, Managing Partner of ICE Company, Asset Bliev, Intellectual Property Agency from Kazakhstan, Oksana Kuzmenko, President of the Association of Licensees, Importers and Distributors, BASIS, and Anna Kastira, Deloitte Legal CIS Managing Partner, Deont Legal. Our guest and colleague Hasan Kurtulush, co-founder and CEO of Proofstack Company, and Inna Polikova, who represents executive authorities, Kaliningrad, representing Kaliningrad Customs Office, and Valeria Brusnikina, representing, she's a vice president of the Association of IP Chain. Blockchain, so it's a slip of the tongue, but blockchain is one of the key technologies that IP Chain deals with. So you understood from my announcement of the topic, we're going to speak about global turnover, local counterfeit, and piracy of intellectual property. So counterfeits production, according to many experts, is a very controversial but extremely acute topic, because we know the position of the states, and a lot of effort is paid by the states to finding solutions to combating counterfeits. If we speak about business and the position of companies, then their point of view is a bit different, because companies think that not enough effort has been paid to finding solutions to the problem. And if we speak about users, our customers that both the states and companies work for, then their point of view is even more complicated, because one of the most interesting research works published last year says that 80% of the population are ready and willing to buy counterfeit products. So you see how disputable this point of view and this topic is, and not in all countries. Authorities, both people and customers, are ready to buy counterfeit production. And I would like to give the floor to Alexei. I know that Rosbrand is at the forefront of fighting or combating counterfeit. Do you think you could say a few words about problems and challenges faced by Rosbrand? Thank you very much for giving me the floor. Alexei, you mentioned this research work. I disagree with the conclusions of this research, because, of course, customers want to buy legal product, and the only sphere of intellectual property where piracy is accepted by our users, these are videos, computer software programs, and music. And these are three types of products that our customers buy counterfeit, even though 15% of our customers, they disagree with the conclusions. And Brand Monitor is a company that we've been cooperating with, and they did some research for us, so I know what figures I'm giving to you. So, of course, it's a real problem, and the recent research done by the High School of Economics at our request, it was 2 years ago, showed that counterfeit production, the market of counterfeit production is 2.5 trillion Russian rubles in Russia. This is a significant sum of money. And counterfeit production is not only a problem typical of Russia, but it's typical of so many other countries. And 2 weeks ago, President Trump announced that he starts a campaign against counterfeit, and the global counterfeit market is $500 billion, and this is a huge sum of money. And the estimation for European counterfeit production is 85 billion euros. And these are big sums of money. And our European colleagues published research work on routes of counterfeit, where counterfeit production comes from, and pirates use regular mail post delivery of counterfeit production to Europe. So, of course, counterfeit production is the rights holders' problem. It's the problem of our customers, of our clients, people we work with, because, ordinary people, they would want to save on their purchases. And you know that the economic situation in our country is not really favorable, and that's why customers want to save on everything. And counterfeit producers actually try to play on it. And of course, the quality of counterfeit products lacks much to be desired, but customers still buy it. They buy it not because of the trademark, but they buy it. What do they prefer to buy? They buy consumer goods, for instance, a shirt or shoes or some other things. And of course, price matters for them. And I'm sure that other panelists, when they during their presentations, they will tell you a little bit more about ways of combating counterfeit production. And of course, Russia has done a lot to combat counterfeit production. In the early 2000s, then counterfeit, almost 80% of consumer market was counterfeit. But then you know that the situation has changed drastically, and now our legislation is very much in line with international legislation combating counterfeit production. And there are relevant authorities in Russia, customs, which do a lot to combat counterfeit production. And there's a special working group on combating piracy. But unfortunately, borders are becoming more transparent. We are opening to the world, and there are very transparent borders in the EU countries. And you know that Chinese goods, and China is the leading producer of counterfeit goods, and these goods are transported from China via different countries to Russia. And I'm just looking forward to learning from our European colleagues how they tackle this problem. So you know what the problem is. This is a challenge, and we have to find solutions, good solutions to the counterfeit problems, and learning from Europe, from the European Commission. And I'm sure we have to cooperate internationally. We have to harmonize our approach to combating counterfeit production. And I'm sure that if we join our effort, if we harmonize our legislations and tools used to combat counterfeit production. Thank you, Alexei.
So you mentioned some lack of flexibility of counterfeit production. But do you think it can improve the situation on raising the customers' awareness, or just how do the customers react? If we look at the customers, we can see that there are some changes. The customers have become more attentive and more knowledgeable. Now there is a way, which is almost free from counterfeit production. We used to have that in the previous years, when our customers wanted to have some original things, original production, but they bought some counterfeit, and then they were really disappointed with it. But now everything is changing. And in the beginning of 2000, 2000s, people were not aware of some counterfeit production in the market. After the crisis of 1990s, people decided that the producers went for some decreasing or lowering the quality of goods, so that to cope with the economic conditions of the crisis. So they found some kind of justification. But we understand that our Russian customers, they are more eager to buy the original produce, original production, and they are not very much in favor of counterfeit but cheap production. So it's not the blame, the fault of the customers that counterfeit production is still in circulation. No, of course not. People just try to find some kind of justification for something that was of lower quality in the market. Well, you know that, the fight with the counterfeit production is aimed at the customers so that they could have some better quality and better selection, better offer of goods. So unfortunately, it's not aimed at the government. And, just we have to understand who is going to enter the market and control the quality of the goods at the market. I think it's very good, very good space for discussion if we think about how we can develop the system of marking of the counterfeit or the original production. $2.3 billion rubles, sorry. It's quite a sum of money for developing some special marking systems, and it's even comparable to the expenditures on the World Cup. But what kind of events are planned? What kind of strategies are planned to improve the situation with counterfeit production and with the events which can help us discuss the counterfeit production? And what is the kind of image of the modern violator? So the question is absolutely correct, because the examples and the strategies that you have mentioned, and especially we could test all the strategies during the recent World Cup on the territory of the Russian Federation. So all these examples showed us that we can't use the ideal model of counteracting counterfeit production, but the model must include the major components which are responsible for providing some efficiency of the mechanism so that it can work efficiently. And first of all, that's about the active, just the active stance of the rights holder when it comes to delivering the information to some enforcement agencies and to some controlling agencies, if you want to to identify the qualities of some particular goods. So in place, we are to have a system of counteracting the counterfeit production, and there will be different mechanisms like legal mechanisms, administrative mechanisms, which make it possible to to charge the offenders with some violation of norms. And so you can say that the law is not so bad. Yes, the other thing is the application of law. Right, absolutely right. The second point, which comes together with the active stance of the rights holder, is the activities of the rights holder to ban this counterfeit activity, because every time when it comes to the facts that the rights holders identify or discover some cases of counterfeit production, they must report the cases to the administrative authorities. And that's their contribution to the fight on counterfeit production. And of course, it involves the government, it involves the administration, and that can initiate some kind of action on the administrative side. But when the rights holders and the consumers of different goods do not report that, it results in this lack of communication. So the producers and the customers will probably have to relate to different institutions like customs and the control agencies using some particular mechanisms, but much depends on the efficient, active stance of the customers. Then it becomes really difficult for the counterfeit producers to act freely on the territory of the country. We have got some specially founded institutions which see their major task in fighting the counterfeit production. Well, and they are to carry out the work. Do you think that challenges that we see here have also, modified, have also changed? Yes, I would say that the environment is a little bit different, and our legal and administrative practice have undergone some changes. And today, the customs regulations, the customs rules, and the control over the shipment or the transit of goods which enter the country from the territory of the customs unions, they have also changed a little. Yeah. So we have simplified regulations to the goods which we export from the country to the territory of the customs union countries. And another thing is intensifying control over the goods when they are staying at the border, when they undergo some border procedures. As for the challenges, I can say that there are some challenges. We develop internet sale very actively, online sale very actively. So just it grows 3.5% a year, the volume of sales. But when it comes to online sales, we have to understand that it's in international format, and we have to apply some international standards on how to counteract counterfeit production. When our customers buy something from AliExpress or some other platforms, we will then have to understand what the regulations are. And when it deals with some international counterfeit, international advertisements for some sites which sell counterfeit production, that's also the issue. Today we are going to speak about some important issues like amendments to the legislation, to customs code, to other regulations, to understand what comes first. Is it about the internet technologies? And can you speak on behalf of the customs authorities about the changes that we can see not only in paper but in place?
So you are right. Now customs authorities go digital, and we have e-declaration and e-issuing of declarations, and the control over the transit of counterfeit goods is done. In any case, when our clients fill in their declaration, and of course we understand all the risks associated with the transit of goods. And of course, we assess all the data over on the transit of goods, and we are doing our best so that to protect intellectual property rights. And we are actually now working on the exchange of information with the right holders through the personal account of right holders. And as soon as this work is done, as soon as this project is implemented, we will speed up the declaration of goods and cutting the time. And not of course, we understand that not all right holders have their personal accounts, and all not all trademarks are included in the register, and that's why we have to work with right holders, sending them email and using traditional channels. For instance, we send emails, and of course we hope that in the future we will use these personal accounts more actively, and of course this auto lease of license, this system is not yet working on full scale, not yet. So do you have any new technologies? I heard about these e-declarations, electronic declarations, and Ross Patent, Mr. Kirik spoke about the introduction of AI systems for formal testing and formal inspection. So do you use clever technologies, smart technologies? Well, judging by your silence, well, I understand that probably not. Not yet. There's not AI is not yet used. So my question is to Oksana Kuzmenko. So we'll listen to a representative of customs authorities. They want to change things. They want to go digital, but it doesn't happen so fast. But they are doing their work. So how about right holders? Yes, I agree that our customs authorities, they have managed to do a lot to go digital, to improve their processes and procedures. They are becoming more operational. They go, when it comes down to right holders, then the situation is not so dynamic, and it's not efficient yet, and very often when we work with right holders, we use traditional approaches that we've used for quite some time. And of course, when we speak about this private accounts, there is a special on the platform of this private accounts, there is a special page with a register of customs objects, thousands and thousands of customs objects, and it's and via this web page, it is easier for us to work with customs authorities, and right holders. Right holders are too slow. They do not join these electronic platforms, and not many right holders have their private accounts on the platforms that my colleague spoke about. And right holders complain about a lack of automated system of filing documentation and sending these documents to customs authorities. Only traditional routes are done, and sometimes it's difficult to get electronic signatures, and right owners complain about the speed of getting all the necessary documents approved, but the situation is changing for the better, and we hope that in the future there will be more transparency, especially when it comes to the cooperation between right holders and customs authorities. So as I understood it, the major challenge is a big volume of data and increasing the speed of documentation processing. Yes, that's true. There is the notion of auto lease and the right owners, they do not understand, they are not fully aware of the existing possibilities. They are unaware of the details of our customs registers, and it's good to have one single register. But when we cooperate with the national customs authorities from Kazakhstan, from Armenia, we have to harmonize our approaches, and there are tools that we can use to make our cooperation more transparent. And I'm sure that if we work with the customs authorities more closely, then we have to look at our work with right holders and speak about the interest of right holders to protect their own rights. And right holders can work with us and with customs authorities, because there are, some right holders. They are part of the customs registers of custom register of the Russian Federation, and I think it's enough. They are not very much interested in protecting their own rights, unfortunately. And I think that right holders have to be more active themselves, so that and change their own strategy. They should be more active in this digital environment and accept these new formats, working with us and with customs authorities. And I'm happy to hear that you understand all the latest trends and what is happening in business, that digitalization is already in place. And we spoke a lot about physical goods, physical counterfeit productions. For instance, if we go to markets and we can actually touch this counterfeit production, but physical or tangible counterfeit products can be bought on the net, and it's easier to search for them on the net, and it's more difficult to control, to insert barriers for counterfeit production. So I would like to ask Pavel Katkov. So how difficult is it to follow like the whole chain, how counterfeit production gets to our markets?
So I would like to have my presentation in the screen and give me the portable microphone, if it is possible technically. But if not, I can try to adjust this microphone better. So, so I can stand with it. I can stand holding it. Okay. I promise that I will speak briefly, but I will show you some slides. I represent the company Katkov and Partners, and I'm the member of the board of this company, which protects the intellectual property. Well, I've got only 3 slides, but I think that they reflect on the situation which we have got now. And when it comes to counterfeit goods online, you can see that about 300 billion calls, visits on their pirate websites happens every year, annually. And the pirate number 1 is not Russia, but the United States. If we count the unique customer visits, the Russian pirate market. Well, when I say pirate market, I mean media content, the films, videos, and so on. Last year, it comprised $85 billion. And it actually equals the value of the films which come online, come on the screen, on the big screen. So that's basically about media content, and the counterfeit goods which are online, or just counterfeit calls which are online, are about the piracy. So I quite recently spoke about the representative of one of the companies who also complained about the customer or the counterfeit requests, and that how many of them she can see online. And I asked what company you represent, and she said Kamaz company, the auto-producing company. So this market grows 20% annually, together with the growth in electronic commerce. Yeah, so just it shows the growth in this gray zone, and the goods shelf and the customs authorities. Well, that's quite okay. It's obvious about counterfeit goods, but we go online, and it's rather difficult to trace the volume of counterfeit goods online. 80% of goods which people purchase, purchase online, they purchase after they have checked the same goods in the real shop, in the physical shop. So it means that the real physical shops become the stimulators or the motivators of counterfeit sale. So if you want to search for some counterfeit goods, or just if you want to produce some counterfeit goods, some goods, online, you will have to spend only 5 minutes. When it comes to some physical space, and when you come to physical experts who have to produce a claim, it takes much longer. You can see all these actions that an expert has to take, like to check the object, to check the rights, to launch the search, and so on. Yeah, so just sometimes a lawyer can spend several days checking the counterfeit goods, and of course, pirate can outplay the real physical lawyer because it takes much shorter time online. We decided to fight it. We decided to find some technology which can fight it, and our response to that is the technology which is called Keep Monitor. Keep comes from our name, and keep from the English word to keep. Yeah, and we monitor 25 million websites a day, or we monitor 120 goods aggregators. Yeah, so they aggregate the links, web links to some goods which are sold online. Yeah, so that's what we do, and we. You can send 500 calls a day, internet calls a day. I think that not a single lawyer can do the same volume of work. It's automatization of this process is something that we can do in the future, and it is really promising for the future. So it is automated search, it's automated tracking, it's just automated everything except physically going to the court when you have to be present in person. Not a single lawyer can do that. You can see Valeria Brusnikina here. She is the representative of IP Chain, and probably we will talk about IP Chain as a register. But seeing or just analyzing the future of this model on the counteracting piracy in future, I think that it can be it can replace the physical lawyers in future. I think it will be really great if in future we can merge with the register. We can make it easier to identify the rights and to search for some particular information. So because of course, a certain number of pirates are well known to some legal authorities and to some lawyer companies, but just at the same time, when we do all the automated search, as soon as we find out what violation is about, and when it happens, we have to send, well, a kind of paper document, a hard copy of the verdict, or just a hard copy of some solution to the pirate, a signed copy. So just that's the 21st century, automated century. But anyway, so we have to do it like this. Well, so some conclusions to my presentation. The pirate will always outplay the physical lawyer, and piracy is not only the Russian problem. Yeah, so just piracy is the universal global problem, and the pirate as a technological agent will outplay the physical person. So it means that we can come to the conclusion that it can be only automated system which counteracts, or just which plays against the automated system. So the robot can do something that a lawyer cannot do. So I had very little time, but behind me you can see our contact information. And if you have any questions, I can tell you everything about our company. So if there are any questions, I'm ready to answer. I have got a question. Let's get back from online to offline space. And you talked about trademarks, and you also mentioned another aspect which is very important, copyright. When it comes offline in physical counteraction to counterfeit goods, do you think there is some shift, some unreasonable shift or disbalance to when we think about the trademark? So like what disbalance? When we work more with the violations of trademarks, I think it's not disbalance, but it's the lack of protection to trademarks. I will give you some example. Russia is the only country in the world, well, probably Germany is another one, the only country in the world where you can get the court's decision on blocking the piracy link, the pirate link. And 5 or 6 years ago, we accepted the law, and then there were some amendments to this law. But anyway, this law can get you, can help you get this decision in just some minutes. But it's not about the trademark; it's about some counterfeit goods. And the statistics which you saw in my first slide is still quite urgent. We do accept different laws, and sometimes we see the amendments to the laws. I would say that this kind of more clarification that we give to the anti-piracy law helps us understand the issue much better, and helps us see it from different angles. And then we also understand that there is some lack of protection to trademarks, which is another issue to discuss. But I think that it must develop, or it should have developed some other way, the other way around, because when it comes to trademark, you anyway deal with some paper document, and it is usually something that is better protected because it is tangible. Yeah, but I think that, sometimes it's more difficult to go with online, to work with online goods, because if you want to prove that some goods which are sold online are counterfeit, you have to make the trial purchase, you have to bring it for the expert evaluation, and then you have to produce some decision, and only then you can sell it to the producer. Are there any lawyers in the room, in the audience? I would like to speak to real lawyers, because very soon, as we hear, we will have only digital legislation, and only digital legislation will be fighting all the other problems. But, you are not the first one. German Gref has already mentioned that we are entering the epoch of digital legislation. Yeah, so we heard this forecast that digital legislation will appear in 2034, 2040. But I actually don't believe believe it. I think that nobody can replace, well, a person, but you don't have to have, well, but even if one robot can replace 100 lawyers, so it can intensify the work. But we all write different claims, and we all write different complaints, and in this case, the human factor means a lot.
Anna Castira, you will definitely not lose your job, no matter how many robots will be involved in this in the solution of these legal questions. I have a question to you. So we spoke about trademarks, we spoke about right holders. How about patents? And you work in the pharmaceutical with the pharmaceutical industry, and I know that patenting there is quite an acute topic. Yes, I will speak about the pharmaceutical industry a bit later. Thank you for your optimism. Of course, we are a developing agency, and I am drawing a picture of myself being a pensioner, and I don't do nothing, and I'm using some automated program that does my work. But this is just a joke. I go back to the topic of our discussion. So let us start with the definition of what counterfeit means. So if we speak about counterfeit production, and this is my personal belief, so everything that comes as a parallel import, I call it so. This is a counterfeit production. Counterfeit is something that was produced with the violation of intellectual property rights or any ownership rights. And I look at the counterfeit from a broader perspective. Of course, everybody suffers from counterfeit productions. Customers suffer, and I will be giving you examples not from the B2B, from the B2C sector, but from B2B. For instance, if we take machine building, we lose a lot of money, and I will give you some very telling examples when we simply will not be able to fight counterfeit production using just some technologies or software where we need a human lawyer. For instance, if we take engineering documentation, so it's impossible to put it on included into general register, even though you know that we can include trademarks and other IP objects into the register, but it will not work as efficiently. So my clients representing machine building that I've been working for years, I teach them to defend their intellectual property rights for their technical documentation. And counterfeit production is a very dangerous thing for them. For instance, they produced a turbine, and but they need some spare parts. And other companies produce spare parts, and the producers of this the manufacturers of the spare parts, they use the technical documentation of my clients, but they never asked my client company for the patent, for the right to use their technical documentation for the production of spare parts. So this is a breach of legislation, and we understand that components of turbines or other equipments, they tend to get broken, and spare parts are always in need, and very often my clients find counterfeit parts to their own equipment. So what do we do? What do we say? We teach our clients to defend more actively, more aggressively, in the positive meaning of the words, your rights. This is your asset, your tangible and intangible asset, and you have to defend your rights for your assets on the market. You should prohibit smaller companies, and there are many companies like this, to produce parts using your using your technical documentation. It's if another actor, another company buys counterfeit spare parts, this is also a breach of legislation, and my clients have to defend their rights working with those who produce counterfeit production production and those who sell and use this counterfeit spare parts. And this is a very correct, this is the right strategy, because we educate the market, we educate our customers, we educate other companies, we educate the businesses, and companies very slowly come to the understanding that if you produce, you are a breacher, and if you buy and use, you are a breacher of the existing legislation. So my company, we try to explain to the producers, to manufacturers, what kind of assets they have, intangible assets. Then we teach them who are, or show them who are possible breachers and where to take the claims to. And this scheme works, and we do a good job. And it's very difficult to overestimate the work of lawyers in this respect. And we have, of course, it's very difficult to work with technologies, because we have to be really experts in the field the company specializes in. We have to understand this sector of the market. We have to see bigger players and niche players. We have to work with bigger corporations and smaller ones. And we have to and there were cases that when even bigger companies, they, without knowing it, they buy counterfeit production, like spare parts, from smaller producers, smaller manufacturers. So what I use all this example just to show that not only individual consumers suffer, but also companies suffer and the market suffers. This is our joint problem, because companies do not understand what they have rights for. They don't use all the opportunities and all the tools to protect their intellectual property rights. So my final appeal is just think what rights you have and defend them. And this is the best way to fight counterfeit production.
It's difficult to disagree that the lawyer will stay in place, and especially after the words of my colleague, I have the impression that we must keep lawyers, in practice. Well, probably it just took some time for lawyers to think, or Robert can never replace the lawyer, because the robot must be programmed, so you must write the software, and software will be prepared by the lawyer. So then probably lawyers will be the software designers. They will write the necessary software for these future digital legislators. Yeah, well, I'm not afraid. So just when we speak about pharmaceuticals and counterfeit, then that's a very complicated story. We have got the register of pharmaceutical things. But there are such cases when we produce something before the expiry date, and the producer, the right holder, says that his rights are violated because data exclusivity is still here. So he is right. We have to protect the right holder, and it's. But when it comes to the market, I think that it's absolutely counterfeit pharmaceutical produce, because it was produced not with the breach of technology, but it was produced with the breach of right holders, the rights of property, and the property rights. So because it was produced before the time when it can be sold on market. But so when we speak about the whole market of national procurement, so we understand that we cannot sell the goods which were produced with the violation of the ownership rights, and we can see such cases. But at least if it's the violation of data, of expiry date or data or exclusivity date, then of course we understand that such goods cannot be accepted by the market. We have to show the respect to the rights holder, and otherwise we technically produce counterfeit goods. So it's good that we have referred to the national purchases. has national orders. I will get back to the order or just to the major issues. Well, very often we produce something in transnational, transborder chains. Does it produce any new challenges? Does it produce any new difficulties for the rights holders in one country and the target audience in a different country? So, do you think that it produces any difficulties? That's Anna. That's to you. Question to you. Yeah, of course it produces the. Of course, it produces a lot of challenges when it comes to transborder purchase or transborder shipment. So I think yes, but the register. I think that national register hasn't started working yet, or the European register hasn't started working yet in our country. And that's a certain challenge, how you can bring in some goods if the item is not on the customs register, then it means that the very essence of the customs union loses any sense. Yeah, for example, you produce something in Armenia and you try to import it to Russia, and if it's not included in the customs register, then you have no right to import it. I guess that it's probably it makes sense to fight the parallel import rather than see about some customs regulations. I think it's really of low efficiency if you bring in some counterfeit goods. So do you think that somebody disagrees? Yes, right. So there are big amounts of counterfeit goods. Well, as soon as the item is included into the customs register, they disappear. The counterfeit goods disappear after a week or two. Yeah, so just it works really very well. There is no incentive to bring in the counterfeit goods. The Constitutional Court does not stop us from fighting the counterfeit goods brought from through the customs union, across the customs union. But you know that if the item stays at the border clearance for 10 days and then it goes further to the customs union, so just actually it has got all the mechanisms to go further. But if the rights holder studies the whole chain from the producer to the supplier, and if they study all the necessary information about the supplier, about the goods, so then it will make sense to include the item into the customs register. Yeah, probably, but I'm quite neutral about the idea on marking or on coding the goods, but at the same time, as soon as we can code, we can barcode all the goods, we can see all the chain, we can trace, we can track the whole chain, then the information will be ready available to us. So then it means that we will have a kind of transparent system. Probably it makes sense to invite an expert next time in a year, to invite somebody, some expert from the national coding authorities, so that because actually the very idea of coding different items makes sense if we think about counteracting counterfeit goods. So people who bring in tobacco and who export and import tobacco, so they say that it helps them a lot, but at the same time but at the same time, the amount of smuggling also rises. Well, I would tell you that the share of illegal production in the market is growing, and it is growing rapidly, but I don't give you the true figures. Well, but we can say, for example, that nothing has changed in the fur coat market. I don't know what the producers say, but they say that that 2/3 of the fur coat market is still illegal. So I say that somebody must come to the market and check the coding and punish everyone who is to be punished. But we don't know such experts now. We don't have anybody to come to the market and bring the punishment. But I wanted to add to this question, or I wanted to clarify some other point, how the international cooperation influences. Well, it influences a lot. We used to bring in the counterfeit goods, just in one conditions. We now have some different conditions, because sometimes packaging is produced in one country, then labels are produced in a different place, and the product is produced in some other part, and the whole thing gets assembled on the territory of the Russian Federation. That is international integration cooperation, international cooperation of the criminal syndicates, and our legislative authorities must be very clever, must be very clever to counterfeit these clever people who try to make their business lucrative, just at the most, most beneficial. So we spoke about transborder licensing, which virtually erases the border, the national borders. But we have been living in the customs unions where these border realities also have been erased. But the war of sanctions of the recent years makes us take some effort while it comes to transporting goods over the borders, and we have probably to work together. So I said, so the question is to you. We have listened to many opinions, and we have heard how it changes in Russia. Do you think that it changes something in Kazakhstan?
Yes, it goes without saying that what happens in Russia has an impact on what is happening in Kazakhstan, because we are partners in this customs union, and there are joint laws, joint legislation, harmonized legislation between our countries as members of this customs union, and laws in Kazakhstan are changing, and I do agree with Alexei, and we can see it from our practice. The manufacturers of counterfeit production, they also develop, and new routes appear. So there used to be lorries taking counterfeit goods to Kazakhstan, and now these are just regular people, the so-called holders. They work in groups of 20 to 30 people. They have several bags. Each of them has several bags, and then they cross the border back and forth several times a day, and it's very difficult to trace them, to track them. And there are new goods, like spare parts, for instance, and without any trademark, spare parts without any trademarks, and when they are brought to the country, so we find it difficult to trace this counterfeit spare parts. And the most effective way to protect ourselves from counterfeit products is to strengthen our customs procedures. And we have a number of proposals in this respect, and we thought it would be necessary to ask those who fill in the declaration to fill in the trademark information in their declaration. And mobile groups, we have to work with our partners, with Kazakhstan and China, and we probably, if we speed up the exchange of information between us, our country, and Russia, and information transfer is a very important factor in combating counterfeit production. So how active are Russian IP rights holders in Kazakhstan? Yes, they are quite active, and because for many groups of cargo of products, Kazakhstan, they are active in Kazakhstan, and they either take their goods to Kazakhstan or use Kazakhstan on their way to other countries, to other markets as a transit territory. And why only like as a transit territory? Because some goods, they are not in demand in Kazakhstan. So, well, we have to food for thought, and Russian rights holders have to reflect on what is available, what technical solutions are available to protect the transit of goods. And combating counterfeit production is becoming more high-tech, and that's why I would like to give the floor to our colleague who is going to present one of the technical solutions, how it can be done in practice. So the floor is given to Hasan Kurtulush, co-founder and CEO of a ProofStack company. So he's offering high-tech solutions, and that will help us to stop all the breaches of the violation of IP rights.
Counterfeit products, intangible or tangible. It's all our problems. It's global. But if it's global, but there is no enforcement framework. There is no international copyright law. So if there is no copyright law, then there is no deterrence, because you need to create deterrence on the infringer, potential infringers. So as you see, Google transparency report, according to that report, they remove 900 million URLs. People, it's not easy to do legal action in another country, but it's easy to remove the URLs, like takedown services. So they want to do legal action, but they cannot. But to stop the infringement, you need to create deterrence. How you can create a deterrence? Like copyright symbol, does it help? Until now, no, doesn't help. We need international protection. But it's not just one legal proof. You need a legal proof for your product. You need a legal proof, legal detection for the infringement. So to use your legal proof in your country, maybe it's more easy. But as we talk about, there is no enforcement framework internationally. So in Russia, you have an authorized document about your product, but you need to use your product in another country. You see in the first graphic, it takes time. Some proceedings, it depends on a country, it depends on a time, and it depends on your lawyer. If there is mutual recognition between two countries, then the process is more short. If the process is more short, the deterrence is high on the potential infringers. So what my company do is, we're creating multi-local legal proofs. So we give you opportunity to that. You create your legal proof in your country, but instead of using this legal proof in other country, we help you to create legal proof on that specific country. So, for example, here, Turkey, you can. There is a online notarization. Some call qualified authorities, some call trust services. So, for the same file, for digital file, we create a notarized proof in Turkey, and for Germany, there is different case because it's in European Union. And European Union, they make everything one single visa, one currency, and now one digital single market. So if one European Union country you create legal proof, it's legally binding in 28 EU countries. So at the same time, you have a legal proof in Turkey, you have a legal proof in 28 EU countries. And now there is another technology, blockchain, which is a new global trust system for the future that countries can use together. I will give you an example. For example, in Turkey, there's a producer, one of my friends, he make a cartoon movie. And somebody used this movie in his website. And then he removed it. So you see the second one, he removed it. In that case, we need to create proof that that video was there, you get benefit, and you remove it. So what we do is we record the screen, we use the website metadata, and then we timestamp it with the qualified authority. We do this in Turkey and in Europe and in the blockchain protocol. But, so the court make a decision. The court says that, yes, that video was on that website, and that guy, he make benefit, he make money, and then they make their decision. Today, I can tell what is the best solution or for today or for the future. What is the best practice? For best practice, it has to be cheap. It has to be international. It has to be national. It has to be recognized by the government. The more legal, the less process, the more deterrence on the potential infringers. But another things, blockchain is the future. Yes, there are authorities in Turkey, there are authorities in European Union, but the main point is the new global trust system. The new global trust system can be based on global notarization. And this need removing the third party. So if you see this, there are authorities. You have to trust their server. Your data should be recorded there. But in blockchain, your data can be recorded in millions computers. Nobody can remove it. Nobody can delete it. Then everybody can trust each other. That's why the Bitcoin protocol will be made on blockchain. So, as I told you before, European Union, they make everything one. Visa, currency, digital single market, and after 15 years, the first EDAS regulations, they make the second one after 15 years, 2016, and they make the last European Partnership Agreement just 2 years ago. So for the first one, they wait 15 years, but for blockchain, they don't wait for 2 years. They don't wait for 15 years, they wait for 2 years. So for best practice at the moment, what is legal in Turkey, what is legal in European Union? Qualified authorities, yes. But the future is definitely blockchain. Спасибо.
Thank you, Hassan. Just one question. In which countries have you already launched your system? В каких странах уже система запущена?
It's not just one country, this is globally. Everyone can use. There is now 3 universities, they use us, law firms, they use us to create legal proof in Turkey, in European Union, and wherever the blockchain protocol recognizes. Like, some prefer to use the Ethereum protocol, some people use the Stellar, but we provide all of them. So wherever the country regulated, they can use our product. But for blockchain, we cannot say this country, because the laws for blockchain always changing. But for qualified authorities, here, I can say now, if you use German authority, you have 28, in 28 EU countries, you have legally binding proof that the judge cannot ignore. Strong proof, strong evidence, the judge can ignore, but this one cannot. But for blockchain, today, for example, you use Bitcoin protocol or Ethereum protocol. Today, legal maybe 5 countries, but maybe 1 year later, it can be 50 countries.
Thank you. Спасибо. Важно то, что вы отметили глобальность этого решения, то есть не узконациональную направленность.
So it's good that you've mentioned the global character of this solution. So thank you so much for the presentation, and it's a really good, innovative product. And we are moving to the final part of our session. Valeria, I think that it's less, or just you cannot find a better time for your presentation than now, because, well, we spoke about different things like integration, information, big data, diversification, the difference in property rights protection. So probably they can be applied to your technology, to IP chain. Yes, absolutely. That's about IP chain, and that's about our register, and this register tracks the life cycle of the object and how the rights holder works with the object. And so we include some institutions, some public institutions like Rospatent, and we kind of go nationally. So I do not want to advertise our agency, but I would like to speak on the counteractions online, which the acts which we take online in fighting counterfeit goods. We have been talking about this for 3 days already, and we have been discussing the illegal use of the objects of intellectual property, and we have seen some illegal actions over the last year. That what has changed, what has changed on the legislation level, and what has changed in the search engines, in the search systems. But I can say that not all the mechanisms work well, and not all of them are quite resultative. Well, if we think about online sector, we understand that one deleted pirate link can brought in 5 or 10 new links, and we can see some new players who can help rights holders to fight counterfeit use or counterfeit goods or illegal use of their intellectual property. So Pavel told us about Keep Monitor. And there are some other services and applications like InRead service, which works with 4 types of different objects like texts, literary texts, music, images, and different crawlers. Crawler, which roams online and looks for some illegal content, or which can check the content in various networks and systems like social networking sites and some other sites. And so it can check the images, and it can check where image was taken, whether it was a shot from the screen or whether it was some other picture, and how it is used, how legally or illegally it is used. And then it triggers the electronic mechanism which helps delete links if they are illegal. But I have got a provocative question. You've talked about a number of your partners, but when it comes to the customs authorities and their issue with the goods exchange or illegal goods tracking, so do you think you can talk about it? Yes, certainly I will talk about it. But just the thing that we have noticed is that sometimes the fight with the piracy is not very efficient. And quite recently we discussed with Rosnadzor, we discussed some whitelists which can include the companies which use only licensed goods and licensed services, so-called with white reputation or good reputation. So it means that sometimes we can apply this our offline strategy, how to fight the counterfeit goods, to online. So we heard that about 6,000 objects of the intellectual property are included in the customs register. So just you can say that it's too few, or is it too many? Well, last year the Rospatent registered about 25,000 trademarks, or 50,000 trademarks out of 80 or 85,000 which applied for for registering. Yes, but the registers are being updated. Registers can be sometimes overlap, so it means that they must be coordinated. Yeah, so and then IP chain could be a good solution to such registers or to this synchronizing work. Yeah, so any number of participants can be included into IP chain register or into IP register, and you can introduce any types of objects like trademarks, 3D models, the logos, and so on. Everything that is imported in Russia every day. At the same time, IP chain makes it possible to keep physical files in repositories, like audio files or some images and so on. INRIS is one of the repositories which can store different filed objects. And as soon as you connect them in the real-time regime, you can get the reference, and you can get the information immediately, and the customs authorities could also upload the information about the import of such goods, of similar goods, in real time. Yeah, so they also or they can control and check the goods which are brought into the Russian Federation. So IP chain is the biggest register for the intellectual property. More than 500,000 objects are registered there. But we understand that we must find some other solution which can serve as the bridge between the IP chain and the producers, or IP chain and rights holders. So there is an infrastructure within IP chain which can attract the rights holders. So it's great that it's such a positive final to our discussion. When I mentioned it in my part of the presentation, I also mentioned that it would be nice if we can work online and offline, and if we can work with some more advanced registers. So then I think that we are ready to be to be included into IP chain. So it will intensify our work.
You have to become either an operator, so to be integrated. My company will become a part of IP chain. You see how productive we are in integrating different authorities and representatives of different companies and different branches. And I'm sure that our partners from Kazakhstan have nothing against this kind of integration. So, as I said, we had many speakers, very interesting panelists, and we are finalizing our discussion at a very positive note. Yes, there are challenges that we have to face. There are people, not yet robots, who are ready to work on those challenges, and there are technical solutions that will definitely help these people to achieve their aims. So higher, the Olympic principle, higher, stronger, and further. I would like to thank our panelists, and of course thank the audience in this hall. And if we use Andrei Krichevsky's methodology, so we are all integrated, judging by the fact that everybody in the audience took the front seats. So there is a contact between the panelists and the audience. So that's why I would like to thank everybody for your active participation in our session. Thank you.